to my channel. My name is Rakita for those that are new here, and I love fashion, luxury and books. Today I'm going to be sharing my 5-star rated books for the year of 2020. So I recently got back into reading. I used to read when I was a lot younger, and then life got in the way and I stopped reading, but I decided to get back into it at the end of last year. Instead of scrolling through my phone on the train on my commute to and from work, I decided that I would start reading. And then 2020 happened and I had a lot of spare time, so I did a lot of reading. The genre that I used to like to read was contemporary romance, just because I liked the look of the covers. They were always really colourful. But over the course of the year, I started to get a little bit bored, because I guess if you read contemporary romance, you know that most of the books have a very similar storyline. So I started following some book clubs on Instagram, and I've been trying some different genres, but I do like to read outside of the box now too. But anyway, I wanted to share my favorite books of 2020. So the first book I wanted to talk about was From the Corner of the Oval Office: One Woman's Misadventures Learning the Ropes, Falling in Love and Finding Her Voice by Beck Dory Steen. So I've actually spoken about this in a YouTube video that I posted before COVID. It's basically a book about Beth, who was working in the White House at the time that Obama was president. It's just a story about her following around Obama, and then also a little bit of a mini love story about her life. Personally, this book I loved reading about what she did in the office, in the Oval Office, and hearing stories about Obama and the team. That was probably my favorite bits of the book. I didn't really, not really enjoy it, but the parts about her own personal life weren't really my favorites. But overall, it was a really good book. I read this really quickly. It was an interesting read, and I would recommend this if you're interested in that sort of thing. You know, for me personally, I wasn't really, but I found this book super interesting. The next book I want to talk about is All About Us by Tom Allen. So this is a contemporary romance. So I read this in December. Well, for the last 2 years, I like to read holiday Christmas books during the month of December, so usually they tend to be contemporary romance books. This was the first one I read in the month of December, and I really enjoyed it. I think maybe 5 star was a little bit too much. If I could go back, I'd probably give it 4.5 star, but at the time I really loved it. I read through it really quick as well. During the months of October and November, I wasn't really reading a lot of books, or as much as I was the months before, but this book I really enjoyed. It was nice because it was a male's point of view. So it's about a guy called Ben who is married to a girl named Alice, but there's also a girl, Daphne, who he sort of had a mini fling with when he was younger, and he thinks, was she the one that got away? And then he gets this watch that mysteriously takes him back to that time where possibly Daphne got away. It's an interesting read because it's not your usual fall in love, something happens and then they get back together sort of story. It was a little bit different, which I really liked. It's a book about not appreciating what you have, so I would recommend reading this. It's a nice, easy read. The next book that I have is The Scent Keeper by Erica Baumeister. I think that's how you say it. So this is about a girl called Emmeline who lives in a remote island with her father, who teaches her about the natural world through her senses. A set of events happen and Emmeline is vaulted out into the real world, and it's just a story about her life. I really liked this book. This is actually from Reese's Book Club, and I was following Reese's Book Club quite closely for the first 8 or 9 months, but this was one of the books that I didn't really want to read. It was on my shelf for a while, and then I decided that I should read it, and I actually really loved it, especially in the earlier parts of her life. I felt like maybe the end, you know, there were a few loopholes. The end wasn't as good as the starting, but overall it was a really good read, and I really enjoyed it, and I read through it really quickly. The next book is Where the Crawdad Sings by Delia Owens. So this, I think, is actually another Reese's Book Club book. It's a book that is quite popular and I always see on Instagram. And I bought this book, and again, it was on my bookshelf for ages, and then one day I picked it up and I read it in 2 days. I loved it. It was such a page turner. So it's about this girl called Kaya Clark. She's called the Marsh Girl. She lives on the marsh, and basically she lives on her own from a very young age. So it's a story about her survival over time. It's actually a really good read. Again, this book does have loopholes. You can look past it, and it's a really good page turner as well. So I would recommend this book as well if you haven't already read it. I'm pretty sure everyone has read it. The next book is The Girl with the Loud Voice. So this was another book that I think I spoke about on my channel before. This is about a 14-year-old girl in Nigeria, and it's again a story about her survival and her life and it's really sad at times, but it's such a good read. It's such an eye-opener to see what happens in the other parts of the world. And this was probably my second favorite book of the year. I loved this book. It was also like my first book that wasn't like a contemporary romance, and I really enjoyed it, which was also another reason that I wanted to branch out of just reading contemporary romances. So I would definitely recommend this book. So the last book is my favorite book of the year, and it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. So this is a story about two sisters in World War II, both leading very different lives in France when it was the height of World War II. It's such a good story. It's really, really sad, and it's actually the only book ever that's made me cry while reading. Very emotional. I loved Vivian, who is one of the sisters, and also Isabel, who's the other sister. Their stories are so different but so captivating. It is a bit of a longer book compared to the books I usually read. Will admit at the beginning was a little bit slow and took me a little while to get into, but once I did, I really loved it. Would definitely recommend if you haven't read this already. And on Goodreads, it's got a super high rating, and actually on my book year of review, this is actually the highest rating book that I read in the year of 2020. My number one recommendation for you to read, if you haven't already read, it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and this is actually going to be a movie with the Fanning sisters, Dakota and Elle, I think is her little sister. They're both going to be playing Vivian and Isabel, so I'm really glad that I read this, and now I'm excited to see how they portray it in the movie. It should be very interesting to see. So that is my 5-star books of 2020, my favorite books, page turners of the year. If you've read any of those books, I'd love to know what you think. I know everyone has different reading styles, so a book I might have loved, you might not have. And if you do have any recommendations for books I should read in 2021, please comment down below. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.